The best advice I could ever give a parent, especially a dad, is simple. But guess what? You don't even need to hear it because you're watching this video. Let me explain. My name's Ed O'Keefe. I run the Ed O'Keefe Show. And as a father of 7 kids, I get asked the question all the time. Oh my gosh, how do you do it? You got 7 kids. I only have, and then they insert their number. And the first thing I say to them is, I always go like, well, wait a second, like, don't disqualify it. Like what raising one human being is a difficult task uh, alone. So even if you're raising one and you're like, I feel overwhelmed, I'm frustrated, don't even know what I'm doing half the time. Let me just share this with you. Number one is you're watching this video. And the fact that you actually clicked on a button that said, something about the best advice I could ever give a mom and dad or parents, it just tells me a lot about you yourself right away. So number one is your intention by even clicking on this puts you ahead of so many people. Okay. And so that's number one. And so I want to applaud you for that. Number two is that the best advice I really could give, I'm going to give you a couple pieces that have served me well, but by no means is this my way of saying like, this is the way to be a parent. Okay. And usually, like, if you ever watch any of my other videos, when I talk about you find your best clients, your most profits, blah, blah, in your business by looking at your worst clients, your worst profits, or whatever. So much of the best advice anyone can give you about being a parent or being a dad and trying to raise these kids in this crazy, chaotic world comes from our biggest mistakes, right? So number one is this. You clicked on this, which means intentionally you're asking a question, how can I do better? Or how do I become better? My wife and I are asking that every day. We have 4 in high school at the time of this recording, 1 going off to college and 3 in grade school. And probably like you, the craziness of what's going on in the world, of us having new challenges, like of battling social media and the news and what our kids are dealing with at schools and politically dealing with stuff. And just, there's issues that we have to deal with now as parents that our parents didn't have to. I mean, I was joking with somebody yesterday. I said, when I grew up in a family of 13. Yes, we're Catholic. Yes, we're on the south side of Chicago, because those are usually the next 2 questions. Like, are you Mormon or are you Catholic? Well, we're Catholic. And my parents were amazing. My dad, electrician, I think for 43 years in Chicago, got us all through Catholic private schools. My mom stayed home and raised us. She was just amazing. And my dad was like the perfect demonstration of, hey, if like, I always recall this very vividly, is that like I'm sharing a little bit of it, giving my dad this story because my dad was built differently. He was a bigger guy than me, huge hands, hard worker. If you ask my dad how work's going, usually he would say it's good. There's lots of overtime. So, when overtime, they get paid time and a half. And, my dad's trick was he would take us out to dinner or take us out for pizza. We'd get our report cards back. And back then, again, like, my parents just wanted us to be good to other people and just get good enough grades that we were, able to get through school. That was back then. And I still remember this. I think like I had mostly C's, a couple B's. And, my dad comes home from work, and I know in some households that would not go over too well. But the way we were raised, my dad was like, all right, let's go. We're going to Fox's. And he would take us up to the pizza place, and he'd probably enjoy a few beers, and we'd sit there in the booth, and me and my siblings, and we'd eat pizza, fries, and Cokes, and life was amazing, right? And he was so proud. He'd tell everybody, like, oh, they got this is report cards. And the guys were all going, how did they go? And he'd be like, they were amazing. But there's a lot to be learned in that, right? There's a lot to be learned in that, and whichever way you want to take that. So for our household, my kids are some great students despite their parents, right? I was never a great student. I didn't realize like how to become smart until literally after college, when I started learning how people learn. Um, I share that because there's a number two that I probably want to push towards you is like number two is being there and showing up is a big percentage of parenting. It's a big one. Brian Tracy, the legendary success coach and speaker, and someone who I love and highly admire, I hired him a couple of times when I was growing my businesses and running seminars. He'd come speak and he'd come talk to us. And he said to me, he said, there's no better line than the straight line home. That's what he said. That's number one. And he said, kids don't understand the difference between quality time and time. And he said, sometimes people like believe they're just saving up for quality time when it's really about time and spending time with them and being there at their games or showing up at their events. And that's something that I think can get overlooked sometimes. Like, oh, especially with parents fighting for like their own identity. You got to have your own identity, zero question. But put the time in. The time makes the biggest difference, right? At least that's what we intend to do on our end. And I sacrifice a lot on the time side, purely because they need it. Like when I used to travel a lot more and I used to either attend seminars or run seminars or speak at seminars, I always had a 48-hour rule. And in some ways I did a 24-hour rule where I'd fly Southwest, and my goal was to leave after they departed to school and then be back the next day before they got home from school. So they didn't really realize I was gone, but more than one day or one sleep. And that worked really well. Now, I don't think you always have to do that. I think there's plenty of opportunities where you should prioritize your own adventure and your own opportunities. So definitely there's a yin and yang on that. There's definitely a teeter-totter on this, right? Number three, wag the tail and get excited. So I have two different contexts where I'm going to pull this from. One is that, I judge myself when I walk into a volleyball gym on how the kids are responding to me based on how they see me when I enter the gym. And so now I don't coach teams as much as I used to, but I'll come in as a guest coach or as a mentor or whatever they need me to do. And when I go in, I always look at the responses I get from the players because I want to see how I've anchored them. And anchoring is a concept that I think Tony Robbins was one of the first that made it popular, but it comes from Pavlovian psychiatrists that would show a dog the food, and then they'd smell it, and they would start to salivate. And once they would salivate, Pavlov would ring the bell. And it was just pure conditioning of like putting it, removing it from its space, putting it there, ring the bell. And you're able to do that so many times that when the dogs hear the bell ring, the dog salivates, right? And so that's what we call an anchor, is where they start associating a certain response to a stimulus, right? And the stimulus in that case was the bell ringing, and then the response was salivation. So in parenting and in all relationships, like you and me, there's a point where we all have a certain feeling towards the people we see the most. And could be good, bad, ugly, indifferent, could change depending on your mood, it's all those things. But there's definitely an association that occurs when kids see their parents. And, and there's definitely phases of life, like I have 3 under the age of 11 right now. And I just love those ages because they get so excited to see you. It's just such easy to talk to them. Then you got your high schoolers, and they're always in a hurry to go do what they want to do. It's all about them selfishly. And we've all been there. Like that's what teenagers do. And so one thing I just want to focus on is like, how do I become the loving encourager So we still have our boundaries, we still have our disciplines, and we still have our expectations. But my child sees me as their greatest fan, even if I am hard on them, right? How do I become their greatest fan and supporter and encourager through that process? I know, by the way, I could already hear people back saying to me like, well, Ed, you don't understand. So-and-so's always like not listening to me. Listen, I get it. Okay. I get it. Like, I've seen it on multiple sides of the fence. I've been on that side of the fence as a kid, as I know you have been. I've seen it as a coach in just watching the different dynamics of all the players and parents that I've worked with. I've seen it in our own household, and we are by far not perfect at all. So there's no way I'm abdicating to you like this is the law and you got to do it my way. What I'm just saying is like the more aware we are of how we're making them, how they're responding to us, we then we can start working on ways to change that response. Does that make sense? Because when we go put that work on what we can control, now we have our power back in our world. And as you know, like as parents, we only can control what we can control. And then we're trying to influence another human being. It's a really tough job, right? It's a really, really tough job. Okay. So, which leads me to number 4 or 5. So I would give this advice to high performance coaches. Okay. Or if somebody's in the gym with me, and we're training athletes to be the highest level we possibly can. Okay. So I'm giving that context. So it lets you breathe a little bit. And you're like, my kid will never do this. Is that we want to figure out how to utilize positive directional languaging with everything we do. And so what do I mean by that? Real world example right now. One of my kids, I'll pick on my son. He's big enough to handle it. He gets to drive one of our cars. Great kid, good student, great athlete, across the board, green check marks on everything, right? But he's doing something that is aggravating his mom. And I'll tell you exactly what it is. He's not checking in and letting her know and asking for permission from his mom on where he goes with the car. Now, listen to me. Like when he looks at this, he would say like, Dad, I mean, like, this is crazy. Like you guys always let me go to this location or go do this. And I say, hey buddy, listen to me. Listen, right now you're playing defense and you're not showing the respect to your mother that she needs. And I'm asking you to play offense, which is to get ahead of the curve. And all you got to do is simply send mom a note, give her a call, send her a text, say thank you. Like you need to get ahead of that power curve so that she's not tracking you down, wondering where you're at, which creates that friction. This is a very silly example. I know I'm keeping really simple examples here. But if he can take control over that, all of a sudden, mom's a lot happier. So my phrasing to him is, hey, buddy, we got to go on the offense here. Okay? And so I'm not focusing on how he's being an idiot for not calling his mom. I'm not telling him he's dumb. There's no negativity in that phrase. It's like, hey, man, I know, I get it. But you got to understand, like, you got to go on offense here. You got to remind yourself to do this. You got to remind yourself to do that. It's the whole thing of like, hey, don't carry don't carry something like that because it's going to break. And what happens? The kid drops it and it breaks. So we got to flip it as like every time you're like, I'm about to tell them what I don't want them to do. Or maybe I did say, hey, I don't want you to be late after a curfew. So 11 p.m. You immediately need to throw in there, hey, so what that means is I need you here at 10:59. So I need you to be early because see, that's positive languaging. It's giving them an embedded command of, hey, I don't want you to be late. So what I need you to do is I need you to be home by 10:59. I need you to be here on time. I need you to give me a call at 10:45 so I could be expecting you. All those things are positive things that move in the direction. Now, when I'm coaching athletes, the languaging is always about like, hey, we need an aggressive serve. We need it to hit this location on the court. I want you to hit number 4's left foot. Where most parents, when they yell from the stands, is don't miss the serve. And it's like, no, see, like that's negative languaging. It's going to command them and program the wrong way. Okay. And it's here. So the last one here is this. is that when mom and dad usually are most irritable, right? Whether it's frustrated, irritable, blah, 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 we usually need help. Okay. And so this is for the parent part here. If you need help, that's usually when we're struggling and we'll snap at our kids more. Does that make sense? And so whatever your system is, I would say that I'm a much better parent when I work out. Okay. When I get that fitness in, gets the endorphin releases, makes me feel better about my body, gets my sleep better, gets my, my bowels better, gets everything better. My smile's better. And usually I'm a guy, I like going to classes. I like going to a CrossFit class. You might want to do it by yourself. But what I would say is that any kind of interruption in the day where you can get those endorphins going and simultaneously you get to get some socialization so that you can get out of your head a little bit and interrupt that flow. Huge benefit, right? Last one I'm going to say is this. Parents need to have adventure in their life. They need to have things to look forward to. And usually, like I'm at the phase of life where usually that comes in the form of what are we doing a 29029 event, which is we're climbing a mountain. Are we I have a few bucket list items I want to get done this year. Are we running hell on the hill? What are we doing? Because that's something that excites me. Going and hang out at the beach, for me, doesn't excite me. No judgment towards you at all. My wife loves the beach, by the way. Drives me a little up the wall. I can't sit still like that for a long period of time. So, you got to have that on your calendar, and you got to have your own personal development plan as well. How's my psychology? What's a skill set that I'm committing to? How am I trying to increase my finances? How am I trying to, get more physically fit? How am I looking at my existing network and improving the languaging? Because if I find myself around negative people, guess what? I just tend to be more negative. I remember being a younger husband and being after softball, listening to guys complain about their wives. And I came home and I saw those same things that they were complaining about. And I was like, wait a second, because it's whatever you focus on expands, right? So I just decided, look, a couple things. I am not going to criticize my wife and do that. And I'm not going to partake in that circle environment. If I need to work through some things, then that is between either my coach or a really close personal friend for me to talk to about. But whatever you focus on expands. Again, whatever you focus on expands. So if I'm focusing on what's wrong with every one of my kids every single day, then guess what? I'm going to have 7 negative associations every single day. Every single person that walks in my household, I am gearing up the day to not be a positive, joyful, loving environment that we're trying to raise positive, successful, strong, willful people that we're sending off into this world. And so the focus has to be on those characteristics. When they're not acting in those characteristics, we need to bring them back to that. Is it perfect? No. Do we ever have to go to counseling with any of our kids? Absolutely, right? It's for them and us to have an environment where we still set our expectations. Why? Because it's our house. It's our family. And today, in this crazy world that we're living in, it has never been more important. I should have started out with this. It has never been more important than to have great dads, great moms, whether you're together or you're apart, or you're a partner, or you're whatever your thing is, right? Maybe you're the acting father or you're the acting mother in that relationship. You have a very, very powerful ability to positively influence someone, whether you know it or not. And it's a huge responsibility. And so the personal development side of your life is probably, if I was going to back up, is probably more important than anything. Because if I'm focusing on my psychology, my physical fitness, my finances, my network, and growing those things and choosing good mentors, good people that are making me better, reading good books, listening to good podcasts, then I'm going to be an extension of that. And it may take time. Like we may be pouring water on concrete for a really, 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 really long time. But you know what? There's no job in the world that's more important, more vital right now than ever before and has the biggest payoffs that you can ever have. So it gets harder as they get older because the dopamine hits of when they're little and they smell good and they want to talk to you and they think you're the best thing in the world, there's less of those. But, they need you. They need you, they need you, they need you. You're important. Even if you feel like you're not a part of something right now, you are important. Get back in the fight, get back in the game, keep finding ways, ask for help, bring in the resources, do what you got to do. But, you are a very important person in that kid's life. So invest in yourself, invest in them, and be that dog that wags the tail. That's their positive ally in their corner and sets positive structures. That means you do push them. You do expect a lot out of them. But, they want to think like, look, when all stuff hits the fan, I can turn to my mom or dad and I can get that support. So that's it. Hopefully you do not feel like I'm talking down to you at all. Not at all. Not at all. I'm talking hopefully life into you in a really encouraging way, that, there's a reason why we exist. And it, is, without being political, I'm going to stay out of that for a moment, is it's just never been more important that you influence your ability to influence. Okay. And so that's it. Matt O'Keefe, if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to this channel. I have a ton of stuff for entrepreneurs, people that are trying to make their lives a little bit better. If you haven't checked me out over at Ed O'Keefe Live, join my free 7-day challenge. It's pretty awesome. Grow your business, or transform your business, your body, and grow your personal brand in 7 days. And then I'm your personal mentor on that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And then also you get a free copy of my book, PDF copy. Plus we have a ton of other resources. So that's it. Share this with a friend that may enjoy it. And I appreciate you. Have an amazing day, and we will talk soon. All right. Bye-bye.